So we're ready to get started. For those of you new to ITSM Academy, here is a quick overview. ITSM Academy is a full-service provider of IT service management education. We develop all content in-house, including our ITIL education, as well as our process design, Agile, and DevOps. Since 2003, we've trained and certified tens of thousands of students. Now let's introduce today's speaker, Mark Edmead. Mark is an IT transformation consultant and trainer. Over the past 28 years, Mark has provided IT transformation and business improvement services that align information technology with business goals to drive bottom-line performance and growth. Mark is a Lean IT accredited trainer, a DevOps trainer, a certified COVID trainer, TOGAF 9.1 certified, a certified Baldrige internal assessor, and a business relationship professional accredited trainer. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. I'm going to make you, and I'm going to make you the presenter. There you go. And thank you for joining us this morning.
Okay. Can you see my slides okay?
I can.
Perfect. Okay, so I guess we'll get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining this topic, this discussion on business relationship management, helping converge business and IT. Just a little bit more about me. I have been doing this for quite a long time, and I've actually I found that in many cases the challenge that I faced working with many organizations is the challenge of how do you converge the business and IT. So in this topic, we're going to talk about what that means. We're going to talk about the challenges that organizations face, and maybe to provide you some advice and some tips on how to on how to fix that. So the first thing we're going to do is I have a little bit of a story, and this sort of illustrates the issue that I've seen in many organizations. There's a man in a balloon, and the man in the balloon is lost. So he is hovering over the ground, over this park, and he sees another person that's down in the ground. So the man in the balloon says, "Where am I?" And he asks that to the man on the ground. And the man on the ground says, "You're in a balloon, and you're about 20 feet off the ground." So the man in the balloon, you can tell that he's exasperated. And he says, "Let me ask you something," to the man on the ground. He says, "You work in IT, right?" And the man on the ground says, "As a matter of fact, I do. How did you know?" And the man in the balloon says, "Well, I asked you a question, and you answered me exactly what I wanted, but it doesn't help me at all. And the information that you gave me is not what I want." And so the man on the ground says, "Well, let me ask you something, sir." He says, "Do you work on the business side?" And the man in the balloon says, "As a matter of fact, I do." And the man says, "Well, how did you know that?" And the man on the ground says, "Well, you asked me a question. I answered you. However, it's not what you wanted, but somehow now it's my fault." And that seems to be sort of the analogy that happens when you're talking about the interaction with business and IT. It's almost like they're speaking two different languages. And so what we're trying to do here is we're trying to see how we can better establish communication between these two groups, the business and IT. So I have the first survey, so if you don't mind putting that up, that would be great. And the first survey is, have you heard of the BRM role? I just want to kind of get a poll to see how many people here have heard of the business relationship management role.
Ooh, they're weighing in on this one, Mark. We've got about 85% in there.
Wow.
Still coming in. Yeah, this is great.
Okay.
Okay, we've got 87% have voted, and I'm going to be closing the polls in a couple seconds, so just make your selections. There we go. Good. We've got 90%.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, so we have 82% yes and 18% no.
Okay. All right. So, a good portion of you have heard about the role, which is good. Some of you have not. So those of you that have heard of the role, let's see what you do know, and hopefully the information that I have for you can help add to the knowledge that you already have. So why is this discussion important? And so there's a couple of reasons why. Well, number one is that the BRM role is a relatively new in organizations. We heard about the BRM role back in 2011. It was part of the Untitled Foundation. There was a mention about the business relationship manager, which was great. But really, as far as exposure into an organization, it's relatively new. And many organizations are looking to establish a BRM, presence in their organization. So there's still a lot of unknowns, and there's still a lot of different types of, conflict between the BRM role and perhaps other roles like the business analyst or the enterprise architect and so forth. So it's good to really get a foundation of what the BRM role is all about. The other reason why this discussion is important is because the IT service management relates to the activities performed in order to deliver the service, right? So from one end, you have the business side of things, and the other side, you have the IT. And so we're trying to figure out how these two can converge and work well together. So we're going to talk about what exactly is a BRM, and we're going to talk about the synergy between the BRMs and the IT service management and how they can coexist and work well, together. And so the purpose of my talk is to provide an introduction to the BRM role and how it helps converge IT and the business. Now, I want to make something a little bit clear here. This discussion primarily deals with IT and the business. In the classical term of the BRM role is not just IT. We actually call that there's a customer, which would be the business, and there's a service provider, which in this case would be IT. But it doesn't always have to be IT. It could be any department, any group that provides businesses provides some type of a service to the client. So because I come from an IT background, and that's pretty much the universe that I live in, that's what I'm going to talk about. But again, it doesn't have to do necessarily only with IT. It can be any service provider that's providing any type of services. It could be HR, anything that it provides to the business. And the other thing why this discussion is important is because it's all about managing relationships. It's all about to make sure that the service provider, in this case an IT service provider, is providing the services that the business needs. So when the man in the balloon asks the question, where am I? And IT is going to interpret it as, oh, what you're looking for is exactly where you are, and I'm going to obviously tell you the obvious, you're in a balloon, but that's not really what the business wants. And so there needs to be some sort of a way to translate and some sort of a way to be able to interpret what does the business really need so that IT can give them the answers that they want. Now, one way that I like to start a discussion like this is to talk about what does the business think about IT and what does IT think about the business. And so if you were to go into, and I've done this survey for many years now, and that was the question that I asked to my other students or the people that I do some consulting for, and they're saying, well, we need to fix, or we need to figure out how these two groups can interact with each other. And the question I would ask them, I would have two different groups in the same room. One of them is the business, and the other side would have IT. And I would go to the business and I would say, what do you think about IT? What do you think about the relationship that you have now with IT? And while there were many answers, I compile what I would think are the top answers in this case. So the first thing that came up is IT takes too long to do anything. Anything that we want to do through IT, it just doesn't happen right away, and I need the answers now. So that was one of the things that they came up with as an issue as far as working with IT. The second one is that IT does not understand our needs or requirements. Again, the person in the balloon saying, you know, what I'm really interested in is that, sure, I know that I'm in a balloon, that's pretty obvious. What I'm really asking for is, you know, how do I get to where I need to go? However, the question wasn't asked, so therefore you can't blame the person that is in IT, giving them the answer they don't really know. Sometimes the business thinks, well, they should know what I want. And that was one of the things that the business thought about IT. The third one is IT is too expensive. You know, anything that needs to be done through IT seems to be expensive, which usually leads to the business creating what they call their own shadow IT group, or going outside and getting a third party to do the work, as they figure, well, you know what, first, they take too long. Second, they don't understand what we need. And third, they're too expensive, so why do I even deal with them? I'm just going to go ahead and either create my own shadow IET group or go to the outside and get somebody else to do it that seems to understand what it is that I am looking for. And the other thing was IT delivers technology that does not match our needs. You know, where IT is going off and developing some technology and the business says, that's not what I asked them for, that's not what I needed, you're giving me the wrong answer, hence I'm going to go ahead and go outside or do it myself, right? And perhaps that's what technology understood to be the needs, but because maybe the business didn't explain what they wanted, that's what they're going to get. And the other thing was IT seems to tell us no to our request. You know, anything that I want, IT says, no, we can't do it, it's impossible. Excuse me. So again, they're going to go to the outside. So do any of these sound familiar? Right. I'd like you to think also maybe some other reasons or some other things about what the business, in your sense, thinks about IT. And if you're in the IT side, maybe what have they told you is the problem. So kind of think about that and to kind of put it in perspective. Now, we're not going to just talk about IT and say all of these bad things about IT. We're going to go and say, what does IT think about the business? You know, because there's two groups here that need to interact with each other. So now let's talk about what IT thinks about the business. And so one of the things that came up is business constantly changes their mind about what they want. How many of you have faced that? You know, where they want this and then no, they want that, and then the scope changes, and then of course they want something different and they still want it within the same time frame. And IT gets frustrated with that. Okay, so that was one of the things that came out of the survey. The second one is that the business does not understand what we do in IT. You know, there's a lot of things for change management and project management, and you know, the business says things like, "Oh, just write a couple lines of code, or just change this, and it should be fine." No, it's not exactly that. And so, you know, the business doesn't quite understand all of the issues that IT has to deal with. The third one is business comes up with IT solution. It does not ask us what we think. Again, this is where the business says, you know, we know the answer. We went to a conference, we saw a show, somebody sent us a white paper. We know exactly what we need. We're going to implement this technology, and then when it doesn't work, then of course they expect IT to fix it. You know, it used to be maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, many of my clients from the business side would say, we want to go to the cloud. And says, okay, well, do you know what the cloud is? Well, no, but I've read about it and other people are, you know, doing it. That's what we want. And I go, well, before we decide to go to the cloud, let's really look at what your needs are, you know, first. But in many cases, they'll just go and implement it and they'll really interface with the IT group. And then when things don't work, then they expect IT to fix it or even blame IT that their technology isn't working. And this is what, you know, kind of an expansion on that, where the business implements IT solutions on their own and call us when it doesn't work. Or the other thing that the business uses outside IT help instead of us, and again, when the outside firm doesn't, deliver in some cases, then of course they will call us. So again, have you heard of any of these before? Are there any other things that you think that that IT thinks about the business? So there's another poll that is coming up here, and if you don't mind putting that up.
Yes, and this one is on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being great. How would you rate the business IT relationship in your organization?
Right. So now that you have this information about both sides, how would you rate it? 5 being great.
It's looking pretty consistent midway at this point, Mark.
Okay.
Give them a couple more seconds so that they can make their selections as they think about the information that you gave them. Okay, I'll be closing the polls in just a couple of seconds. Okay, so we're at 87%.
Okay.
Okay, so 87%.
All right.
So
a few of you, 5%, you think that the relationship is great, but most of you is right around the middle, which is something that I would expect to see. And some of you say it's really bad. 6%, 19 for you said, at least somewhat okay, but less than half. So, all right. So I have a more complete survey that if you're interested in that, just send me an email, and I can go ahead and send that off to you. It's an Excel sheet, and it has some more questions, and then from there you can kind of do an assessment about the relationship that you currently have, between the business and IT, and maybe help you pinpoint some areas that you want to look to improve. Now, like I mentioned, I've done this survey for many years now, and in many of my courses and for my consulting clients. And sometimes when I'll go into an organization and we don't do the survey, but I will tell them, I says, well, let me see if I can guess what the challenges are. And I come up with this list, and they always come up and say, have you worked with us before? You seem to know us very well. And this is just to show you that you're not alone, that this is something that I see in all sizes, government agencies, nonprofits, for-profits, large, small, medium-sized. This is just something that's the reality. And so the purpose of the BRM is to kind of help to fix that. Right, and so what can we do? How can we get the technology on one side, and how do we get the business on the other side, and have them work well and to coexist? So that's where the business relationship manager comes in. So let me give you some basic definitions of what the BRM does, or what the BRM should be doing in an organization. First, the BRM stimulates, surfaces, and shapes the business demand for the provider's products or services. So again, when we talk about the provider, it could be any type of a provider. In this case, if you want to plug just IT, then that's what you would plug in there. So basically it says, okay, the BRM needs to surface and shapes the business demand for the provider. So what can IT do and cannot do, but specifically what it can do and what value it can bring to the business. It helps to stimulate that. It helps to surface that, because sometimes the business doesn't know really what IT can do. There have been many cases where I've been to an organization where the business is using an outside firm for some type of a service, and I go, you have IT people that can do that, right? They go, really? We didn't know that, right? So part of it is to help promote and to help kind of showcase what it is that IT can do and shapes the business demand and works with the business to say, well, look, this is what IT can do. Let's see how we can help you to integrate what it is that the IT can do for you. And so they also help ensure that the business value from the services is then, captured, optimized, and then of course recognized. And it's really all about the value. It's all about making sure that what IT can do provides value to the business. But of course we need to understand what that value is, right? And so the BRM is then saying, okay, well, what is it that you really want? What are your critical success factors, right? And what has to go right in order for you to succeed? And then the third thing is the BRM act as translators, diplomats, and liaison between the business and the provider, right? So again, that example of the man in the balloon, the BRM is in between the two and says, okay, let me translate. The business said, where am I? What they really are asking for is, how do I get to point X? Right? And there's some diplomacy that needs to happen because sometimes, there's a misunderstanding, and so we help work with that, and just to be the liaison and kind of be the go-between, and usually the primary contact for the business. So one of the ways that I like to depict this is, and while I call this IT business to IT strategic alignment, right? This is kind of And I try to get away from the word like alignment, and I'll explain that in just a little bit. But if you think of it in the older terms, so we're going to replace that from alignment to convergence. But right now, this is how most businesses work. So we have two boxes, and the first box is the business side, and the other box has IT, which has two smaller boxes inside, which is the strategic part of IT, and then the tactical side. So on the business side, there are business requirements, right? They're the business types of your plan, right? This is where the business says, this is what we want to do, now. This is where we're going, and then this is kind of our mission and our vision of what we see that we want the business to do. Now, on the IT side, there's also the strategic, planning, and ideally, the business requirements will drive the strategic planning. I've been into some companies where the IT is writing their own strategic plan without any consideration of what the business wants, which is not the right thing to do, right? So the business requirements will drive the strategic planning. And the strategic planning, from an IT perspective, will create a document that then states, these are all of the strategic initiatives that IT is going to do to support the business requirements. Now keep in mind though that these business requirements are going to change. There's a lot of external factors or internal factors that are going to change the requirements. There are things like, there's regulatory compliance, there's legal things, there's competition, there's lots of different things that are going to drive a change of those business requirements, which are then going to need to be reflected in the strategic plans for IT. So once the strategic plan is done, then what that's going to then move into is the solution building, right, or the IT initiatives, and that's the tactical. That's the part that is being built. And of course, we'd like it so that the strategic planning will drive the solution. Now, in many cases, in some organizations, the solution is being built without having a strategic, plan, and which again is not in alignment, and I use that word alignment here, it's not in alignment with the business requirements. And we've seen that a lot, where the IT is just going off and building solutions without really any consideration for whatever else is going on. Well, then that, once you build the solution, then the solution is going to be implemented, and then from the strategic side, what we have to do is to monitor value, right? Are we doing the right things? Are we getting the value from the solution that we expected to get? Right? But we also have to constantly look at the business requirements to see if that has changed, because then we may have to change things around a little bit, right? So then if we're not getting the value, then we may have to go back to the strategic planning and say, okay, what has changed? Maybe the solution is not really what they were looking for, and then work with the business to see if anything has changed from a strategic side. But also, we also have the business value, right? So we're looking at monitoring value from an IT perspective, but also we're looking to look at the value from a business perspective. And so there needs to be a way that the business can then look at the solution. It's not just from an IT perspective, it's also going back to the business and saying, hey, what we did, is it really giving you what you want? And then if there is no value there, then we have to go back and say, okay, well, let's relook at the business requirements, because again, either they were not understood, they were not explained, or maybe there's something that is missing that we didn't get to before. So where does the BRM fit in all of this, or where can the BRM fit in here? Well, I like to put one BRM here right in the middle, right, between the business and IT, and then maybe another BRM over here that's really looking at the tactical side. Right? And so, in fact, there are two classifications of BRM, and one of them is called the strategic BRM, and the other one is called the tactical BRM. And so the strategic BRM is just looking at the strategy between the business and IT. The tactical BRM, and they're kind of there to look at the tactical solution building. So let's talk about the two different types and what they do. So the strategic BRM is focused on the effectiveness and transformation of the IT and the business to better align themselves. But again, now I want to go and move away from alignment and talk more about convergence, right? And they're focused on the business demand to stimulate, to surface, and to shape. That one of the things that we talked about earlier. And they're concerned with improving the maturity of the relationship between the business and IT. And they work closely with the business partner, right, to ensure that those investments and the capabilities that the IT is doing will provide that real business value. On the tactical side, it's concern on business efficiency and effectiveness, but it's focused more on the service management. It's more of what you consider the ITSM, right? The IT service management portion of it. It looks at the steady state of IT services, and it's normally not focused on transformational types of projects. They're just more concerned with the projects that are already there and the projects that come out of the IT strategic plan that are already part of the implementation. The strategic is really looking at transformational projects and things that are going to help transform the business IT relationship and move business to the next level. So when we look at ITSM, is those activities that include some policies, and it's types of like structured, and they're structured in processes and in procedures. And so from the tactical BRM point of view, the tactical BRM is looking at the activities that the IT department in this case is doing for the planning of those processes and procedures, the delivery of those, the operation, and to again make sure that they're in line with what the business wants. So we see in many cases that tactical BRMs support the ITSM activities. So I want to take a little bit of a change here and talk about what areas do the BRM focus on. And so regardless if it's a strategic or a tactical, although you can see from the definition here that depending on what I'm defining here, you can see that, for instance, the IT service management, right, is going to be more into the purview of the tactical BRM. And they're looking at new and changed services. They're looking at the definition and the adherence to service level agreements, and to make sure that the business gets value from IT services. So that's the first area of focus, and there are four that we're going to talk about. The second one is related to the strategy and the governance, right? So the strategy that we talked about, where the strategic BRM that's sort of standing between the business and IT is looking at the current and future business needs, and looking at both the business and IT strategic planning on both sides, and making sure that we're focusing on those initiatives and those things that need to be implemented that provide the highest value. Also, the BRM is very, very concerned about the communication because, again, a lot of the challenges that we see has to do with there's a lack of the maturity in the relationship between the business and IT. So we act as facilitator and translator between the business and IT. And then the fourth one is innovation, is really helping the business understand what IT initiatives can be put forth that can help optimize the business and to provide some more improvement on efficiency and return on investment. So I've been talking about convergence, and so the industry is saying, you know, it's not just alignment, it's really about convergence. And so what is convergence? And convergence, according to Webster, says the art of converging, and I hate when the definition has a word that actually is what you're looking to define, but it's really moving towards a uniformity. It's moving towards a union. Because the roles and activities that were traditionally embedded in IT are now embedded or in unison with the business. And it's not just the IT business types of alignment anymore. And the reason why we try to sort of divorce ourselves from that term is because when you think about the alignment, it implies that they're two separate entities that are trying to work together, but they're still separate. And convergence says we're really trying to become one. We're really trying to move to become one unit rather than thinking of it as two separate units. And if you could think of it as one unit, then there's going to be a lot less friction between the two. So when I asked you earlier about how does IT think about the business and what does the business think about IT, part of the challenge is to say, well, how do you evaluate how the relationship is now? So some of the questions that you'll find in the survey that I have, like I said, that I can send off to you, are questions like, say, things like, do you know the goals, objectives, and priorities of the business? You know, if nobody knows that, then of course, how can you expect to provide services to the business if you don't know what it is that the business wants? Do you understand what the business regards as value? And this is something that is that we cover a lot in the lean IT. Those of you that are familiar with lean IT, that's something that we always talk about is, you know, what are we doing to create, you know, value? In fact, in lean IT, we talk about what activities are we doing that provide value, right? These are these are what we call value add activities. We have activities that don't add value, which means that we shouldn't do them because they're not bringing you any value. And we also have what we call necessary but non-value added, you know, things that we have to do. But we need to understand that. We need to be able to concretely say that. The other question is, are you familiar with the key business processes? You know, what does the business do? A lot of times I'll go into an organization and I'll say, well, what are your critical business processes? And, you know, who are the stakeholders and who's doing what? And a lot of times that's not really documented. I mean, work gets done, right? Don't get me wrong, things still happen, but they don't really understand the whole process from start to finish. And within that sort of process, and there could be challenges, and that's something that the BRM is going to need to know. The other thing is about the governance, and I talk about, you know, do you understand how the business makes decisions? It is also important, because we talked about earlier that a lot of times what IT thinks about the business is that the business makes a decision without the involvement of other stakeholders, mainly IT, and therefore IT then is left holding the bag. And the other question that comes up, does the business trust IT? And a lot of times without that trust, of course, then they're going to go outside or they're going to create their own internal IT group to do the work. So if you're interested more about the BRM and the actual more information about the certification, which is the BRMP, which is the Business Relationship Management Professional, and then there's a new certification coming out, which is the CBRM, which is the Certified Business Relationship Manager. I would point you to go to the BRM Institute. and what they call the BRM body of knowledge. I actually helped, and I was honored to help contribute some of my knowledge to this BOC. But what the BRM defines, and this may help you to kind of put things in perspective on your end, is the various levels. And the first level is ad hoc, and this is where there's little to no relationship between business and IT. In other words, the IT is completely isolated. The second level is something called order takers, where the business will engage IT only when they need something, right? So again, this is where the business goes and implements something, it doesn't work, so they'll tell IT, hey, can you fix it? But they'll only engage with IT when they need something. The third level is something called a service provider. This is where the business helps set the priorities, but not always with the input from IT, right? So they'll kind of set priorities of what they want to do. Sometimes they will include IT in the decision. Sometimes they sort of won't. But IT is there to just provide a service. But again, usually only when needed. Level 4 is what we call the trusted advisor. This is where the business understands the IT capabilities and trusted level of cooperation. And then the last top level is what we call the strategic partner, which is where we would like to be, right? And in fact, when I asked many organizations, they say, what if you were to do a level, where would you be? And many people say, well, IT is pretty much an order taker. You know, they don't get us involved in anything, but then, you know, they expect us to provide the solutions to what they need, but they don't really spend the time to talk to us about what it is that they're looking for. So again, part of the survey that I have can help you decide, or to at least look at the questions and give you sort of a better understanding of where you are in this, you know, level. I think if you are a level 4 and 5, you're doing pretty good. It means that there's more convergence. You're a trusted advisor. The business understands what you do. There's a trusted level of cooperation. You're converging together, becoming one. But of course, a strategic partner, you know, would be ideal, because then you share the goals for maximizing value. You're acting as one. You're not only minimizing risk, but you're also sharing the risk. It's not, oh, it's business's fault. It's not, it's IT fault. It's really sharing the risk and saying it's both of our issues. So that's where you want to be. Ideally, it is at a level 5. So how do you move up the levels? How do you become more strategic? How do you go to a level 5? Well, one of the things that we can do is say, well, the BRMs need to move away from thinking of the relationship as me and them, but more as us, right? And of course, you want to be able to have the business and work with the business and say, we're going to change the tone. We're going to use language that's going to say more about us, rather than saying, well, IT has a problem, or they have a problem, or this is what I want. It's more about, what do we want as a group? And this is not easy. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you know, you're not going to go back on Monday morning and say, okay, now we're going to start talking it to everything as us, and everything is going to be fine. This is a process that sometimes takes a long time. So it's not their business, it's our business, right? It's not what I can do for you, but more, what can we do together, right? Because when you go into the relationship with what can I do for you, that's really more of an order taker, right? You're waiting for them to come up with what it is that they want. But it's more like, okay, what is it that, what can we do together? Right? So if there was a BRM sort of in between the person on the ground and the man in the balloon, they would say, okay, so what is it that you're looking for? It's not what can I do for you, but what can we do together? What are your needs? Yeah, it is what can I do for you, but if you understand what it is that I can do, and I understand what you need, we can do a better job of hopefully meeting in the middle and making everybody happy. Right? So it becomes more of that strategic relationship. Here are some goals for the BRM that you may want to think about, right? So again, the BRM, and although this is primarily the strategic, it does kind of filter in a little bit as well into the tactical, where the BRM is there to grow the business by shaping the demand, by marketing some new ideas, and creating opportunities for the business that creates value. And of course, the BRM is keeping in mind what it is that the IT can do. The BRMs can help convey the business needs to the IT department and to the IT department, and help manage expectations and help do that translation, that liaison, right, between the two groups, and to help the business and IT speak the same language. So you're converging into one language, because that's another challenge that I have seen where, you know, again, the business is talking to IT about value chain and all these other things that the IT goes, I have no idea what it is you're asking me. And then IT, on the other hand, is talking in IT terms and saying, you know, bits and bytes and megahertz or whatever, and the business is saying, I don't know what that means. What I really want is I really want this. Can you help me get there? And so the BRM is the person that sort of straddles both the business and IT and helps with that level of communication. And in fact, IT does not just support the business, right? It's there to, in fact, enable it and transform the business. It's part of the business. It's not a separate entity, but it's converged into one. It's not them or us, it's we. And so with true conversions, the IT is a strategic partner, right, and not just an order taker, one of the levels that we saw earlier. So to summarize everything, here is an interesting diagram. If you guys may have seen something like this, which is really interesting, and it's a little bit longer than maybe the ones you have seen before, but there's a lot of different people that are involved in the delivery of a project to the business, right? So the customer explained it in this way. It's not really what they wanted, right? But this is how they explained it. This is how the project leader understood it. This is how the analyst designed it. This is how the programmer wrote it. This is how the business consultant described it. This is how the project was documented, which is nothing, and I've seen that a lot. This is what operations installed, and the customer was built with this. It wasn't supported, but then you look at the last one and says what the customer really needed. So the BRM is involved in all of this. So the customer explains it, but the BRM can help say, you know, is this what you really want? And then work with the project leader, work with the analyst, work with the programmers, work with the business consultant, work with the people that write the documentation, work with the people that are installing it and maintaining it, and so forth, so that what the customer needs is what they really get. Because we all know that many times the customer will explain that they want something which is not exactly what they want. Like they say, we want to go to the cloud. And that's what they explain, but that may not be exactly what they needed. So think of the BRM role as an individual that kind of touches all of these different boxes, and to help make sure that everything remains consistent, so that the final project that is delivered is exactly what the business wants. So what are some of the skill sets or the characteristics that the BRM should have? Well, obviously we talked about communication. It needs to communicate, you know, clearly. There's some negotiation skills, of course. We have to listen, mitigating conflict, because you know that that's going to be there, helping to build alliances, and using strong interpersonal and diplomacy, you know, skills. I say that BRMs need to be very well versed with emotional intelligence and patience, because you're dealing with perhaps two groups, especially when they have had conflicts in the past, that you're going to try to make that relationship better. We have to work closely with others, in other words, in the organization, like we talked about. Perhaps it's going to be the business analyst, the project managers, the enterprise architects, or other subject matter experts that either are within the company or outside of the company, and have knowledge of technology risk and opportunities and things that can help propel the organization to becoming more efficient and more effective. And we act as advocate on behalf of the business stakeholders to make sure the IT services meet their needs. And we may even act as advocates on behalf of IT and to make sure that the story and the capabilities and so forth that IT does is also explained to the business so that they understand. And the BRM is there to help communicate the decisions, the priorities, and all of that to the various levels within the organization so that everybody is on the same page. I find that when there's a lack of communication, again, things are getting done, nobody's really talking with each other, nobody knows what the other one is doing, which leads to projects being done that are not providing value. And even though we talk about projects being in alignment, what we're really saying is that there's no convergence between the business and IT. They're acting as two separate units. So hopefully this has given you a little bit of an introduction to the BRM. I encourage you to go to the BRMinstitute.org for some more information. You can get a copy of the body of knowledge. You can maybe become certified as a BRMP or a certified BRM, but just kind of think of the challenges that your business and IT has now, and understanding the language that is used between those two groups, and how can you get those two groups to act as one. And that's what the BRM is all about, is to get themselves right in the middle and to help provide the translation, liaison, and the diplomat between the two groups. So that is it for my presentation. I think we could open it up for some questions now. Here's my contact info. If you would like to send me an email to get a copy of the surveys or any other questions after the course, also feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I also have a blog on CIO.com, and it's actually called IT Convergence, ironically enough, and I write articles on this topic as well.
Great. Thank you, Mark. That's a lot of information for us, some really good information on the BRM, so we really appreciate that. We do have some questions coming in, and those of you who haven't sent in your questions, please do so now. We're organizing them in the background. And just for those of you that need to drop off, I just want to remind you that our next webinar is scheduled for Thursday, March 17th, when Donna Knapp, Curriculum Development Manager here at ITSM Academy, joins us. And Donna's presentation is titled Introducing ITIL Practitioner. So Donna said, continuous improvement is a cornerstone of the ITIL framework, and good news, it's about to get easier. So join us for an introduction to the newly launched ITIL Practitioner qualification. This exciting and pragmatic new course is designed to help individuals develop the critical competencies needed to adapt ITIL practices to their organization's circumstances, needs, and goals. So learn how this new certification fits into the ITIL qualification scheme and get a sneak peek at 9 guiding principles that you can start applying today to the planning and implementation of your service improvements. So we look forward to hearing Donna present that, and looking forward to having you join us. And my colleague, Eric Montijo, is here with us today as well, and he would like to share some information. Hello, Eric. Eric? Let me see. Just give me one moment. Let's see if I can find him.
How about that, Karen?
There he is. Hi, Eric.
How are you doing today?
I'm great today. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. Can you hear me okay?
I can. You're a little bit soft.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm joining today from our blended training room today. I wanted to see how our lovely sounds in our classroom are set up. So thanks for introducing me.
I'm sorry?
I just said thank you for introducing me.
Okay. So you had some information you wanted to share with us today?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Oh, great.
First off, Mark, very much for joining us today for this lovely webinar. BRM is something that we're actually very interested in, and we just put out a new e-learning for business relationship management. It's currently on our website at itsmacademy.com. And you can actually be one of the first people that actually has this as a certification for $8.99. Joining the classroom as well gives you a 50% discount on the cost of joining the BRM Institute. So if you'd like to learn more about that, please go on to our website and go to itsmacademy.com and just search Business Relationship Management. Also, while you're at the website, go ahead and check out our sales and specials. We currently have a buy one, get one free on all idle lifecycle courses that's going on until the end of March. So if you have any questions about any upcoming classes, please feel free to come to us anytime. Send an email to info@itsmacademy.com or give us a call, 954-491-3442. Thanks again, Karen.
Great, thank you, Eric. We appreciate that information on the BRM e-learning. And you know we love our BOGOs, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have some questions for you, Mark. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay.
I hope.
Well, and as we go through this, if you need some more qualification, just ask it, and then the person can just chat us back in some more information. Joni is asking, please explain what makes the BRM different from the BSA role.
BSA, as in, can you clarify that? I want to make sure I get the. It's not a BA. So what is the definition that they have for a BSA?
So Joni, can you chat us in and tell us what you mean by a BSA?
I just want to make sure I get it right.
Right. Business Systems Analyst. Thank you, Joni.
Okay. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure because there's all these different titles going around. So here's the issue, and I'll give you kind of the short story. There is a bit of a challenge between how all these different groups will work together. I have found that a lot of times there is a confusion between what the business system analyst does and what the BRM does. Usually the BRM will use the BSA or the BA or the enterprise architect as the subject matter expert about understanding about the business. But the BRM is looking at it at an integrated sort of higher level. It's kind of looking at it, okay, from a business perspective, yes, it needs to understand what the business has and what the business wants. And can use the BSA or, like I said, or even the enterprise architect to help understand, what's going on. So there's a bit of a distinction on that because the BRM is really concerned about the relationship between the business and IT, or the business and the service provider, when the BSA may not be so concerned about that. They're there to just document what's going on and to help understand what's going on there, but they're not there to really manage the relationship. So that's the difference.
Thank you, Mark. There's quite a few questions kind of around the whole role, so let me just say, and excuse me if I've mispronounced this name, but I'm going to say Tejas is asking, should the project manager own some of these responsibilities? Does it create a clash between the product manager and the BRM?
I laugh because, yes, it happens a lot. And what happens is that usually the project manager is the one that has had the relationship with the client, and now the BRM is saying, no, the relationship is mine. And it does cause, conflict. The reason why that we like to see the BRM role as the primary contact is because in many organizations, the project manager will move from project to project and from client to client, and they're not necessarily assigned to one relationship. Usually the BRM is saying, look, you are my client, I am your person to go to, and I'm never going to go away. In organizations that have like a project management office, when there's a new project, they'll just go down the list of the project managers, and they'll just go ahead and say, okay, now you're going to be the new project manager, and it could be any department within the organization. and usually they're not so concerned, again, like the answer, the other answer for the BSA. Usually the project manager is not there to manage the relationship. They're just there to manage the project. And so that's where the BRM comes in. Not to say that the project manager doesn't manage the relationship. And I've seen that where the organization is small enough where they said, you know, you're also going to be managing the relationship. That is also possible. So how do you solve this? My solution that I've seen that works well is to create a RACI chart. And in the RACI chart has a matrix of who's responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. Then you put a column for the BRM, a column for the project manager, like a column for the business analyst, a column for the enterprise architect, and then you define all of the activities that are going to be performed, and then you say, okay, who is responsible and who's accountable for these different activities. And as long as everybody is sort of on board with what the RACI chart says, then that's what you use. And if you want a copy of a sample RACI chart for the BRM, again, send me an email and I'll be glad to send that out also. Just to get you started. It's not going to be perfect. Every RACI chart from every business is going to be different, but at least it will help you set the priorities and who's going to do what.
Thank you for providing that, Mark.
Sure.
Craig is asking, how many organizations have you worked with that have BRMs? It seems funding for one or more BRMs, even explaining value proposition, could be a barrier.
I've worked with, well, let's just say I don't know how many companies per se, but I've been working and teaching and working with organizations in BRM for probably the last 4 to 5 years. And that's another challenge, is yet in it, it's, you know, a lot of people say, well, we don't have the funding for it, and providing that business value proposition of why it's important is going to be an important type of an element. There's a fellow, and he has a blog. His name is Von Merlin, and he was one of the founders of the BRM Institute. And he has a blog, and he talks about, in one of his blogs, he talked about how do you provide the value proposition so that you can show management. So if you want to do a search for, his name is Von Merlin, and he has a blog, and he has some information on that. You'll also find some more information on that on the BRMI Institute, on the BRM Institute at brmiinstitute.org.
Thank you. Now, Richard's asking, where do you typically see the BRM reporting into the organization?
Usually it reports to IT, usually to the CIO or somebody designated by the CIO.
Okay. And let me see, there was another one about skill sets. Well, here's one. What's the difference between a tactical BRM and service level manager?
That's probably, it's a little bit too complex not to answer it here now, because the service level manager is usually working at the solution part of it, not necessarily at the tactical part. I mean, it's still part of the tactical, it's still part of the solution, but the focus is a little bit different. The focus of the tactical BRM is to making sure that the solutions that you're implementing are in alignment with the strategic plan for IT, while the other person is more in charge with the actual solutions when they're already in operation. And they actually work, you know, together. But again, it's one of those things where when there is a bit of a conflict, creating of a RACI chart would then help say, okay, well, this is what you're in charge of, this is what I'm in charge of. But the strategic BRM is actually listening, again, more interested in the relationship between the business and IT as it deals about tactical issues. Well, the other one is, I think, more dealing with the solution part.
Okay, well, thank you. And
Mhm.
George is asking, what kind of profile of soft skills are then required?
Soft skills. Okay, well, we talked about emotional intelligence. We talked about negotiation skills. We talked about understanding relationship building, understanding communications and how people like to communicate. Uh, so definitely it's a little bit more of the soft skills rather than the hard skills. Uh, uh, and you know, if you look at the BRMI Institute, there's some additional things there that kind of talk about the various types of you know skills. But you know, certainly to be able to interface at all levels within the organization, and you know, be able to talk succinctly with the business side, and of course talk with the IT side, are going to be important skills to have.
George further asked, is there anything like a dashboard to measure and communicate on the quality of the IT business relationship?
Can you repeat that question one more time, please?
I can. Is there anything like
Sure.
a dashboard to measure and communicate on the quality of the IT/business relationship?
Yes, that spreadsheet that I have will give you the ability to use a maturity model, and then it will you know plot the actual results. So I do have something like that. Yes.
Perfect. Again, thank you
So
for
if you're
sharing those.
interested, yeah, sure. And if you want, I can make it available to you and maybe put it under the archives, or if they want to send me an email, I'll be glad to send it out.
Okay. And Elias is asking, is the issue of having more contractors than fixed term staff for IT section related to BRM, or is it the incapability of CEO/CTO to let the business owners believe the IT staff criticality?
Hmm. I'm not sure how to answer that. I mean, of course, being a contractor myself, you know, I don't know if there's a relation between the, you know, two. I mean, many companies from an IT perspective use contractors. I don't know why. Maybe they just would not rather have full-time people. I need to have some more understanding of the reasoning why. Sometimes because the needs, you know, change and they need a contractor for 6 months and then they're sort of gone and they kind of do their resource management that way. So it's hard to answer that question without really talking more specifics about, you know, what's going on at that particular company. I don't
Right.
think there's an answer that can, you know, satisfy, you know, everything.
It's not a generalization.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Right now, that's all the questions that I have, which were really great questions. So all of you, thank you for sending those in, because that was really
Yes.
very well-rounded group here we have here today asking these questions. So
Yes.
thank you for that.
Absolutely.
If you have any more, we're going to be here for a couple more minutes. So if you have any more questions, please just chat them right in. Mark, I also have a lot that say, thank you so much. Great information I can
Oh.
take and use. People are already waiting to get the recording so that they can go through that again. So
Right.
because they want to hear it again and share information with your
Excellent.
colleagues. So, you know, lots of
Mhm.
thank yous and kudos coming up here for you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time again. I really enjoyed this. Very interesting indeed.
Yes.
Yes, from them is what they're saying. So, so once again, I'd just like to remind everybody that our next webinar is scheduled for Thursday, March 17th, when Donna Knapp, our Curricular Development Manager here at ITSM Academy, joins us. And Donna's going to introduce us to the ITIL Practitioner certification course that's just come out. So we're looking forward to seeing that. And we'll send you an invitation for the next webinar, and we look forward to having you join us. And as you log out, if you could just take a minute to complete the post-webinar survey. It's just a couple of questions. Your feedback is really important to us as part of our continual service improvement process. And the survey gives you the opportunity to request any webinar topics that you'd like to see presented in the future. So we really look forward to having you complete that survey for us. And we're getting a couple more. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As usual, we are enjoying it. So appreciate it, Mark. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
My pleasure. My
All right.
pleasure.
Okay. And I want to just thank everybody for joining us and have everybody have a wonderful day.
Great.
Take care. We'll see you next month.